Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. We're going to talk about managing attention when your dungeon player is a dog. All right, so I am preparing to run Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition for a German Shepherd Corgi mix who is named Waffles, okay? And so one of the things that as this first time I'll ever be running for a dog, and frankly, I don't think Dungeons & Dragons has really been run for dogs previously, right? Like a campaign that is exclusively for dogs, right? So this is new territory. All right. So let's talk about, so how do we get there? Like what do we need to do to make Dungeons & Dragons comfortable and accessible for dogs, right? So the first thing I think we need to one of the things we need to manage is attention. All right. Now, what do I mean by that? So actually, some of the things that we have to manage for dogs, they're not different at all than how we have to manage for humans. The only difference is the method will be different, okay? So I already have this problem with Dungeons & Dragons, and I think most dungeon masters have this. Every dungeon master has this problem today, okay? You have, every good dungeon master has this problem today. I think there's a lot of bad dungeon masters who get rid of this problem in different ways, but that are probably not good. But here's the issue, okay? So if you're a dungeon master today and you start your Dungeons & Dragons game, the first thing you're going to do is, in 1974, you ran your Dungeons & Dragons game, right? First of all, movies weren't that great, books weren't that great, video games barely existed, so you didn't have much attention. You didn't have much competition for the attention of your humans, right? But today it's different. If you sit down at the table, every single person at the table has a portal to the infinity, right? Like they have an internet-connected device that has a cooler article, a cooler video game, something that can distract them, right? So we really have to manage human attention, right? Now, one of the things I've done to do that is I run 2-hour games, right? By the way, if you are in a game that runs for 4 hours or longer, that is a strong sign that your dungeon master is incompetent. All right, very strong sign that your dungeon master is incompetent. I think the only people who run 4-hour games today are people, 4-hour Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition games today, are people who don't understand that the 1980s are over, or people who are sad, or people who are sad that the 1980s are over, right? 2 hours is a great length. It's an American movie length. It's a modern length. 4-hour games are utter junk, in my opinion. And if you're in a 4-hour game, there's a really good sign that is a strong sign that your game is regressive, right? And that you're telling small stories that will never impact people beyond your table, right? All right, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run 15-minute sessions with Waffles, right? Because I think currently human attention for Dungeons & Dragons has been cut in half since 1980, right? I don't think any good player would sit in a 4-hour game. I really don't, right? And I don't think I think, actually, here's a better way to say it. I think you really need to question whether you are a good player if you're sitting in a 4-hour game, right? And I really feel like it's a strong sign that you have an incompetent dungeon master if you're in a 4-hour game. Okay. All right. So we've already had to reduce table game length to 2 hours to keep modern human players, right? I think modern dog players for Dungeons & Dragons, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce each session to 15 minutes, right? And then also, I'm going to monitor Waffles for if there's a point where it's clear that Waffles is no longer interested in playing Dungeons & Dragons, that's when the session is going to end, right? That might happen at 5 minutes, that might happen at 10 minutes, that might happen to 15. If Waffles is incredibly engaged in the Dungeons & Dragons game that we're playing, he's making active choices, and he is progressing his player character in a engaged manner, I will consider even doubling the length to a half an hour based on Waffles' engagement, right? So as long as Waffles his attention is engaged, I'm going to keep playing. Now, it's interesting because, first of all, I am making an assumption that Waffles wants to play Dungeons & Dragons. Waffles has never told me he wanted to play Dungeons & Dragons. So I'm gonna enter into this space very, very carefully, all right? So first of all, I'm going to need to, set everything up. I'm going to have this play mat that has a 1d20, that has a 1d20 schema so that he can walk onto the mat and produce dice rolls. I'm going to have doggy sticks where his bite will determine the number on the die that he's producing, and I'm going to have these hard plastic 55 millimeter oversized dice in clear rolling balls. So there'll be lots of ways for him to generate, dice. I'll tell you right now, I think that just generating random numbers is going to be very exciting for Waffles. What does Waffles like and what does Waffles not like? Waffles really likes engagement. He likes when people are paying attention to him and talking with him and rubbing his belly, right? So basically, and this is definitely going to be the first Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition campaign I've ever had where it's almost a certainty that each session I will be rubbing the belly of one of the players, right? That's never happened before. It's going to be a distinct and significant concern, right? Because one of the things is, like, once we get into this, I need to be monitoring Waffles for, is he engaged? Is he still enjoying the story? The moment he's disengaged with the story, the session should end, right? And also, when I do my first session, I'm assuming he's going to want to play Dungeons & Dragons. He may not want to play Dungeons & Dragons. It may become clear that, that Waffles really is a Call of Cthulhu dude, right? And that's his game, right? Not Dungeons & Dragons. I don't know. I'm trying to not make assumptions for Waffles and listen to Waffles and read the cues from Waffles that Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is his game. I'm going to be upset if Waffles comes back and is like, I want to play Beckme. I'm definitely going to be very upset about that, but I'm keeping an open mind and an open heart. Hopefully we do not end up in that horrible state. You know my feelings on that, right? I hope this works out. There's risk. There's risk when you start an interspecies Dungeons & Dragons 5th game, right? And this is one of those things where I was saying, like, as you move forward as a dungeon master, right, you might find yourself in spaces you didn't expect to be, right? I did not expect to be here, right? So, okay, so basically, I want to make sure that I'm monitoring him, I'm keeping him safe, and I'm going to keep it to a 15 to 30-minute game based on his attention to the game. And if there's a point where I'm like, he's here for the belly rubs, he really isn't here for the, to go to the third level of the dungeon, that's the end of that session, right? And we'll bring it back, give him a chance to reset, give him a chance to think about the amount of content that I produced, give him a chance to understand, here's the dungeon, this is what he's encountered so far, and does he really want to go to the third level of the dungeon, or does he want to go back to the tavern, right, in Phandalin? We'll see, right? So these are the methods: reducing the game length to 15 minutes, right? Watching Waffles very, very carefully and seeing if do I still have his attention, right? So, of course, we're going to turn off the television when we play, but is he looking out the window? Is he staying engaged when I'm actually saying the story? Is he looking at me? Do I have his attention, right? And the moment, as long as I'm able to engage him as a player, I'm going to keep going, right? But then I'm going to have to monitor and watch, and when he's disengaged, stop. Boy, I'll tell you right now, one thing that really is fascinating to me is by running Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition for a dog, it's making me wonder about what I do when I run a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition for my own players, right? Now, first of all, I don't really have this problem, right? I definitely don't have a problem with people looking at their phones when I'm dungeon mastering. But I'm wondering if I do have one player who's completely disengaged, should I keep running? It's interesting. Now, first of all, it is different with running for Waffles because he's going to be the only player at the table. Now, why is Waffles going to be the only player at the table? Well, it's the first, human interspecies dog dedicated campaign for, I'm fairly certain I can say, this is the first dedicated campaign that's ever been for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition that's ever been run for specifically for a German Shepherd Corgi mix, right? It might have been run for other, and where there are no other humans at the table, right? And I think running Dungeons & Dragons for a 5th edition for a dog, one of the other things is you need to do it for one dog before you do it for multiple dogs, right? I think there may be a day where I can keep the attention and monitor and have a safe space for 3 or 4 dogs, but we're definitely not there, right? So I need to get my on the ground experience with one dog before I try additional dogs. But I'm really curious, if we've clearly lost the engagement and the attention of a human player, should we continue to run the game, or should we just shut it down and then reconvene next week, right? And what would happen if we did? Because I think if we did, people were like, oh, well, as soon as I'm not engaged as a player, the game ends, right? And maybe that would be a good way to go, right? All that's my opinion. Do you have any other ideas that I can use to make sure that I know if Waffles is engaged with the Dungeons and Dragons game that I'm running, or he's just there for the belly rubs? It is a concern. I want to make sure that I'm meeting him at the level of the game, at the level of the Dungeons and Dragons experience, rather than at the level of belly rubs. Like that could be a challenge. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.